You know, nothing quite hits you like your HOA president standing right on your property line in her pink tracksuit, clipboard gripped like a weapon, casually telling you she's gonna pour concrete down your family's 160-year-old root cellar by Friday, and oh yeah, tack on a $5,000 fine, just because she can. Your little dirt hole is a public nuisance and a structural liability, Mr. Caldwell. Karen Miller said that sticky Virginia afternoon, voice all sweet like she was doing me a favor. We're having it filled with concrete by Friday, and the $5,000 special assessment will be added to your dues. She didn't even step one toe onto my grass, like it might dirty her pristine white sneakers. But her eyes, man, those eyes said she owned the whole damn neighborhood, and my little piece of history was the last ugly weed she needed to yank out. I just stood there, boots planted in the dirt, letting the silence stretch the way the Army taught me after 22 years as a master sergeant in the Corps of Engineers. You don't let the other guy set the tempo. You wait. You watch. But inside, something old and deep lit up like a fuse. That dirt hole wasn't some eyesore. It was the soul of my grandfather's homestead, 5 acres of rolling Virginia countryside that somehow dodged the suburban sprawl, eating everything else. I'd come home 3 years ago, inherited the place, and bought out my sister's share after hanging up the uniform for good. The main house was a sturdy 1920s farmhouse. I was restoring one board and one nail at a time, but the real heart of it all sat right there in my backyard. That root cellar, built back in the 1860s with fieldstone walls and heavy timber doors, nestled into the gentle slope like it had always belonged. Grandpa, with his calloused hands and few words, taught me everything here: the rhythm of the seasons, the satisfaction of a straight fence line, the deep peace of walking into a well-stocked pantry after a long day. After Afghanistan, after all those tours where I was responsible for lives and multimillion-dollar bases, this quiet land was the only thing that smoothed out the jagged edges in my head. I wasn't Sergeant Caldwell anymore. I was just Mark, grandson of a farmer, tending his patch. But the meadows at Liberty Crossing HOA had metastasized around my 5 acres like a cancer. My property was grandfathered in, an island of real history in a sea of cookie-cutter McMansions, but some weird county clause gave them architectural oversight on anything bordering their precious development. I learned that the hard way when I repainted the barn its original historic red. Karen fought me tooth and nail for beige. I won with a historical society letter and pure stubbornness, but it put me square in her crosshairs. To her, my place wasn't heritage, it was a blight. And that weathered root cellar? The ugliest weed of all. So when she dropped her little bomb, I let her smugness hang there, then said low and even, "That cellar was built in the 1860s, Karen. Predates your whole development by 130 years. She waved a manicured hand like history was just an excuse. Covenants are clear, Mr. Caldwell. It's unapproved, unsafe, unsightly. Lowers property values. She said property values, the way some people whisper, amen. This wasn't about safety. This was a power play. Her chance to tame the last holdout and paint everything beige. She figured she was dealing with some broken-down vet who'd roll over. She had no clue a core guy knows 2 things cold: how to build things up and how to tear empires down. The official notice showed up the next day via some sneering kid in an HOA golf cart. Heavy cream paper, bold font screaming covenant violation. 14 days to submit a demolition plan, or start racking up $100 daily fines plus that $5,000 concrete bill. I sat at Grandpa's old oak desk, the letter spread out like enemy intel, first instinct screaming to nail it to her front door. But no, that's grunt thinking. NCO thinking is smarter. You use their own rules against them. You drown them in the process they worship. For 3 straight days I treated it like a mission briefing. High-res photos from every angle, engineering software spitting out cross-sections and timber schematics, a 10-page historical summary on mid-19th century German immigrant masonry in the Shenandoah Valley, soil stability report, pest control cert, everything. I bound it into a 3-inch thick binder with tabs, index, the works. Dropped it on the clubhouse counter with a satisfying thud right in front of Karen and her cronies, Mousy Brenda and Polo Shirt Gary. My application, I said. Looking forward to your fair review. Their faces were priceless. The ARC meeting a week later was pure theater in their beige, soul-crushing conference room. My binder sat unopened on the corner of the table. Karen banged her gavel like she was running Congress and declared the cellar an eyesore that didn't fit their modern harmony. I asked if they'd even read the reports. She didn't blink. We don't need a novel to know what we see. Denied, without review on record. 2 days later another letter doubled down. Deadline the 28th. Fines start the 29th. They even included their approved contractors list, probably buddies getting kickbacks. That's when I knew reasoning was dead. Time to open a new front. I started quiet. Coffee on my back porch with Arthur Abernathy, retired history teacher 3 doors down who loved the old stories, and the young Garcia couple who'd been fined for a kid's plastic slide. I laid it all out. Arthur's eyes lit up like Christmas. Maria just shook her head and said, "She's a bully." We swapped horror stories, wrong mulch, holiday lights left up 1 day too long, grass a 1/4 inch too high. Pattern was clear. Karen used rules to punish anyone she didn't like. The spark caught. We started talking to more neighbors, one-on-one. But the real twist, the one that changed everything, came up in Grandpa's attic. Hot, dusty, smelling of dry wood and old paper. I was digging for anything on the property when I pried open Great-Grandpa Elias's old steamer trunk. Letters, ledgers, and then a thick manila folder labeled simply "The Cellar" in Grandpa's neat hand. Inside were 1970s letters from a University of Virginia professor researching the Underground Railroad. Turns out my great-great-grandfather, staunch abolitionist, used that root cellar as a secret stop. Escaped slaves hid there on their way north. They called it the Caldwell Station. And tucked at the bottom, a heavy certificate on card stock with the National Park Service seal. October 12, 1978. My quiet, humble grandfather had gotten the whole thing listed on the National Register of Historic Places and never once bragged about it. My hands shook. Karen wasn't just threatening my backyard. She was about to commit a federal felony. That cold, focused calm settled over me. The kind right before you know you've got overwhelming firepower and the enemy is walking blind into the kill zone. I called the Virginia State Historic Preservation Office first. The officer on the other end nearly dropped the phone when I described the threat. They want to do what? He walked me through the law, National Historic Preservation Act, felonies, personal liability for every board member, even the concrete truck driver. Fines up to $250,000, prison time. Next I called my old battle buddy Dave Martinez, now a sharp jag-turn lawyer. When I told him about the certificate, he actually whistled. "Mark, my friend, this is beautiful. They have no idea what they stepped in." We baited the trap. Dave drafted a polite letter asking for their evidence, codes, reports, everything, forcing them to either admit they had nothing or lie in writing. Sent certified mail to every board member. Meanwhile, Arthur hit the county archives. Garcia couple helped spread quiet word. A private Facebook group for reform popped up fast. 40 members in a week, stories pouring out. The HOA's arrogant reply came exactly as hoped. Karen signed it herself, claiming their first-hand observation was all the proof they needed, authority absolute. Dave laughed so hard, he almost cried. She just signed her own confession. The morning of the 28th dawned bright and clear, totally at odds with the storm I knew was coming. I sat on the porch with my binder, coffee black, nerves coiled tight. At 9 sharp the rumble started. Heavy diesel engine, yellow concrete truck lumbering down the street, mixing drum turning slow like an angry beast. Karen pulled up behind it in her white SUV, fuchsia power suit blazing, Gary and Brenda smug at her sides. Neighbors started drifting out. Arthur and the Garcias stood solid, silent backup. The driver hopped down. Karen pointed dramatically at my cellar like it was enemy territory. I walked down the driveway calm as you please, stopped at the line. "Morning, Karen. That truck's not coming any farther." She barked a laugh. "It's over, Caldwell. Step aside." I looked the driver dead in the eye. "Sir, I need to inform you that structure is a federally protected historic site, National Register since 1978. Proceeding makes you complicit in a felony under U.S. Code Title 54. I opened the binder, held up the certificate so the whole street could see. Color drained from Karen's face. Confusion, then rage. "That's fake," she sputtered. I flipped pages, highlighted statutes, 5 years prison, $250,000 fines, and looked straight at Gary and Brenda. Their smug grins melted into pure horror. The driver threw his hands up. "Federal prison? Nope. I'm out." Karen lost it, snatched her phone, screaming she was calling the cops because I was threatening everyone. Biggest mistake she ever made. While she ranted to 911, Arthur stepped forward, voice ringing like the teacher he was. "It's ridiculous that our HOA president is so ignorant of our own community's history she'd try to destroy its most important landmark, the Caldwell Station, a beacon on the Underground Railroad. Murmurs rippled through the growing crowd. Karen's power cracked right there on my lawn. 2 sheriff cruisers rolled up quiet. Karen launched into her performance. I was unstable, aggressive, stopping honest work. Deputies listened stone-faced, then turned to me. I handed over the binder, calm as Sunday. Civil matter, gentlemen, actually federal. That's a protected historic site. The younger deputy's eyes widened at the certificate. Sergeant Miller looked from frantic Karen to me, then said flat, "Ma'am, what you're calling a covenant violation, the federal government calls a landmark. Send the truck home and get a lawyer." Karen's face collapsed, total public defeat. The driver fired up his rig and rumbled away. Her empire retreated with it. The dam broke. Neighbors started talking loud, stories, anger, solidarity. Karen shrank, ran to her SUV and sped off. Gary and Brenda scattered like roaches. Next morning Dave filed the lawsuit. Harassment, conspiracy, breach of duty, naming every one of them personally. Judge slapped a restraining order on them same day. Arthur tipped off a reporter. The story exploded. Local veteran defends Underground Railroad landmark from HOA overreach. News vans showed up. I gave one calm interview in front of the Cellar. Phones at HOA headquarters lit up. Our reform group ballooned to 200 members. Under the heat, the management company suspended Karen, Gary, and Brenda. We gathered signatures, forced a recall vote in the high school auditorium, standing room only. Homeowner after homeowner stood up and spoke their truth. The vote? 92% to boot the whole board. Karen walked out to sarcastic applause, power gone. The lawsuit settled fast, insurance company desperate to make it disappear. They paid my legal fees, damages, and barred Karen and crew from ever serving on another board with that company. Most beautiful clause? Front page apology in the next newsletter admitting they tried to destroy a piece of American history. New board, Arthur and Miguel Garcia on it. Wiped all old fines, fired the brother-in-law's shady landscaping company, and started rewriting the bylaws to kill the vague rules that let bullies thrive. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, the whole neighborhood gathered on my lawn for the dedication. Mayor, color guard, news crew, Dave in from the city. We unveiled a low fieldstone path and a heavy bronze plaque on granite telling the Caldwell Station story. Courage, freedom, the people who passed through on their way north. I stood there with a few handwritten notes and said simply that the fight was never just about a cellar. It was about whether petty rules could erase history or crush a community's spirit. This plaque, I said, hand on the cool bronze, is for a historic moment in our neighborhood, a reminder that when good people stand together, they can't be beaten. Afterward, Arthur clapped me on the shoulder and grinned. In a weird way, we owe Karen a thank you. Her obsession with destroying that little piece of history forced all of us to discover it, to cherish it, and to finally come together as a real community. You didn't just save a root cellar, Mark. You saved a piece of our soul. He was right. The irony tasted sweet. Karen wanted total control and conformity. Instead, her greed woke everyone up and turned that old stone cellar into the neighborhood's proudest landmark. Standing there watching kids run across the lawn, neighbors laughing, the air full of real connection instead of fear, I felt it deep. Sometimes the biggest bullies end up teaching us the most. That power without heart always crumbles, that history can't be paved over, and that one stubborn stand can remind a whole town what community actually means. Justice wasn't loud fireworks, it was quiet, steady, and it built something stronger in its place. So here's the question I keep turning over: when does following the rules cross the line into destroying something that actually matters? History, freedom, basic human decency? Where's the line between neighborhood standards and straight-up tyranny? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever tangled with an HOA that went too far? Tell me your stories. If this one hit home, share it with somebody who's fighting their own quiet battle right now. Let's keep talking about it.